Bocchi the Rock finished up recently, and if you're familiar with my taste in anime, you've probably correctly pegged me for a fan. From the wonderful and relatable character interactions, the comedic timing, banging OST, and of course the absolutely pog champion visual language. In an already stacked season, this is one impressive show. Something I find interesting is to compare it to its season mate, Chainsaw Man. Not directly, of course, that would be absolutely fucking pointless, and I don't work for CBR. Yet. But in particular, the fan reaction to the translation of its manga panels. For all the praise Chainsaw Man is getting, there is a fairly vocal portion of its fan base who represent a really troubling notion in my opinion. That anime adaptation should be nothing more than one-to-one literalizations of the manga panel, and any deviation, no matter how minor, is deeply scrutinized. Things could be as exact as they could be without resorting to full-on tracing, yet somebody is going to find a way to pick apart the way Makima is standing. Whereas Bocchi seems to be receiving nothing of the sort from the manga side of things, despite there being some pretty drastic differences between the two. Now, one element as to why is more obvious. Bocchi is a surprise sleeper hit with the majority of the fans discovering the anime first, whereas Chainsaw Man had a huge cult following well before the show was even announced. Unavoidably, expectations and protectiveness of their favorite properties sprung up. But I think there is a broader phenomenon going on here, something much more fundamental, and it helps cement a theory that I've had for a while, that yonkoma manga offer much more flexibility for their anime adaptations. Yonkoma tend to be shorter on source material. At 8 panels per page, 11 pages per chapter, that's usually not enough to fill an entire 22-minute anime episode. However, yonkoma have the advantage over, say, shonen fighting series in that they are character and dialogue heavy, allowing for far greater variance in not only pace and rhythm, but also in duration. Some, like Azumanga Daioh, aim for a steady, relaxing, almost iyashike pace, allowing the jokes to play out leisurely and inserting many scenes of simple chill. Others, like I Can't Understand What My Husband Is Saying, drop the duration down to 3 minutes per episode, allowing for a faster and snappier delivery of the gags. Another factor is that yonkoma by nature involve each panel being the exact same dimensions, as the important things that need to be conveyed are usually just character dialogue and the subsequent jokes. Shot composition tends to be minimal. Medium 2 shots, medium close-ups, over-the-shoulder shots, maybe a fly-on-the-wall style establishing shot. These tend to make up the bread and butter of your average yonkoma manga. Similarly, backgrounds tend to be sparse. Perhaps the first couple of panels set the stage, but as they would only clutter the frame later on, they are implied with patterns or simple pure white. Some, like the similarly premised Hitoribochi no Marumaru Seikatsu, keep things as proscenium as possible, maintaining the simple shot composition, heavy use of patterned backgrounds, and pastel coloring. Others, like the Mimi Pop Team Epic, go absolutely hog wild for each individual bit, and make the lack of cohesion visually the joke. With all those considerations, it presents some challenges for sure, but allows for an amazing degree of freedom when compared to more traditional narrative adaptations. And the variance in yonkoma adaptations is wild. Lucky Star is nothing like Aho Girl, which is nothing like K-On!, which is nothing like Pop Team Epic. And all of them are nothing like Bocchi, which rather than min-maxing on one particular vibe, somehow manages to strike the perfect balance in having it all. Series director Saito Keiichiro talks of wanting each episode to have a clear focus and through line, satisfyingly flowing between opening to ending. As the manga's storyline across pages doesn't always neatly line up with an episode structure, there were many holes to fill and expand. And series composition writer Yoshida Erika did an amazing job at creating a satisfying and cohesive narrative structure. Some episodes pull heavily. Episode 1, for example, adapts 2 chapters, whereas the entirety of episode 5 is based on a mere 6 pages, fleshing out each character's motivation and reaction to the threat of the audition, and subsequently making it overall much more narratively important and dramatic. In certain other anime sub-communities, these scenes might be counted as filler, but they elevate the anime's narrative story into something fuller. And of course, it cannot be overstated how wild the visual landscape of this show is. The manga is no slouch, of course. The usual clean moe aesthetic, typical of Quadrado works, is often broken for the wacky and scratchy bocchi faces. But the anime turns things up to 11, the staff saying they prioritized humor over cuteness when it came to the gags. Often, these gags are expanded from a single panel into those absolutely incredible media mix moments. Bocchi's party person impression through the ukiyo-e painting, the post-apocalyptic witch hunt scene that mimics cell animation, the stop-motion parts, the live-action parts, this fucking 3D devolution scene. I went to the fucking ICU after this. Even less flashy gags get fleshed out, such as the overly PDA couple ruining everyone's vibe, and Bocchi realizing she's unable to invite her dog and her sister to the concert. Both of which were done within a panel or two in the manga, and largely off-panel. And sometimes the gags are taken from the manga and heightened to such a zany degree, such as Bocchi exploding after talking to the Nampa at the beach, her turning to ash and the sealing ritual afterwards, and of course the infamous Bocchi shriek from episode 4. And it's not just the comedy that has this flexibility. As I mentioned earlier, the show frequently breaks away from the limits of the yonkoma composition, to an almost notable degree in this current anime adaptation climate. Let's take another quick look at Chainsaw Man, for example. I'm sure that won't own the ire of anybody. Since the manga already has such striking and dynamic composition, the anime team tend to follow the layouts to a T. They have to make some concessions to fit everything into a 16:9 frame, of course, and I'm definitely not calling them lazy or uncreative. But there's just much less wiggle room in regards to composition. Now let's compare a pretty vital scene in Bocchi. Lining them up with the manga panels shows just how much creative freedom the team took in regards to angles, variance in shot, editing, and visual scope. It captures the essence of the scene while feeling distinctly its own thing. The sheer breadth of the vision is incredible. From the yonkoma comedy, the character sakuga, those medium blending wonders, these fucking faces they do every goddamn episode. They're paced so perfectly, so punctuated and considered, that the show's overall visual landscape as a whole feels so incredibly consistent. Variety, and in particular individualized variety, seems to be one of the core philosophies of the production staff. Chief animation director Quadrado spoke of how they decided not to make widespread corrections of each cut, and instead allowed to express each animator's individuality to allow for variety and expressiveness. Considering the show is about a group of talented youths trying to break out into an indie scene, overcoming their weaknesses by tying their strengths together. It's in the goddamn band's fucking name. This is very appropriate, especially considering that a lot of those crazy media mix shots are outsourced to similar niche independent artists. You gotta admit, that's pretty rock. Bocchi the Rock is a wonderful anime. That's not to say that the manga doesn't use its own medium well, because it definitely does. Such as the clever layout showing each of the band members fulfilling summer vacations, and this impressive moment during their first real live, where Bocchi goes in ham to pump up the unity of the band back up and just show how based she actually is, punctuated by the paneling breaking from the yonkoma structure into something much more dynamic. And my comparisons to Chainsaw Man are simply for a point of reference. I also think it's a fine adaptation that definitely makes its own stylistic choices, while still respecting the source material considerably. But the Bocchi anime just hit different. I've talked a lot before about the importance of adaptation, and the breadth of nuances it can add to a story. Sharp comedy, genuine character progression and growth, absolute tunes, and varied and evocative visuals make Bocchi the Rock a shining example of adaptation. For me, an instant favorite, and one I really hope gets a second season. All that's really left for me to say is,